Hello everyone and Merry Christmas. This is Mary Ott. I thought I would share a little bit with y'all from the prophecies of the Old Testament. There's a lot of prophecies that deal with Jesus himself in the Old Testament. I'm going to start with Isaiah chapter 7. It specifically calls the Messiah Immanuel, and that's where we get the name Immanuel. The first time that we see it. And Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 says, "Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel." And Isaiah is probably one of the most one of the best prophets about Messiah. There's of course other ones, but he has a lot of prophecies about the Messiah. And so that's the first one that specifically deals with Immanuel. In chapter 9, there's that famous passage starting at verse 6. "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David, and upon his kingdom to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." And I love that when Handel wrote the Messiah, he actually incorporated that very famous passage into the Messiah, and I love it. It's probably one of the most infamous songs that deal with the Messiah, is that "For unto us a child is born from the Messiah." Isaiah goes on in chapter 11, and he specifically gives the lineage of the Messiah when he says in verse 1, "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." Now, as you know, Jesse is the father of David, so we know that the Messiah will come from the lineage of David. And verse 2 says, "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, and the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord." And then it says in verse 11, "And it shall come to pass in that day," in verse 10, "And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious." So again, he's reiterating the fact that the Messiah will come from the lineage of David. And as we know, Jesus came from the lineage of David, not just from Joseph's side of the family, but from Mary's side of the family. One of the Gospels talks about the lineage on the Joseph side. But we know that Joseph was Jesus' earthly father. But one of the Gospels talks about the lineage of David from Mary's side, and Mary was his earthly mother, but she was he got his earthly DNA from Mary, and so he was legitimately from the lineage of David. And one of the most powerful chapters that deal with Jesus himself in Isaiah is Isaiah 53, and it really discusses. If you read it, you see Jesus all over it, because this is how Jesus was. And in chapter 53, verse 2, it says, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground," root being another way of saying from the root of Jesse. "He hath no form or comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not." And I love this part. "Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did not esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was there any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper his hand. So this, as you can, if you know the trial and everything that Jesus went through, he opened not his mouth, and as a lamb, he was taken and brought forth in front of the trial, and he didn't say anything, like a lamb was brought to the slaughter. And there's so many correlations that directly point to Jesus Christ being our Messiah. And one of my favorite songs that deal with the Messiah, Immanuel, is O Come, Immanuel. And it is actually 9th century. It's very old. And if you know it, you can sing along with me. I'm going to play it on my flute. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and remember the reason for the season is Jesus, and that if you doubt that Jesus is the Messiah, I hope you will research in the Old Testament and see that Jesus is our Messiah. He is our Immanuel, God with us, and he came to save us from our sins. That's what his name means, by the way. Yeshua means salvation. So I hope you have a Merry Christmas. God bless.